Hi, and welcome to day 66 of 365 days of art. The acrylic pours I did yesterday are still drying, so I thought I would deviate a little bit today. I'm kind of multitasking, and on really busy days where I know I have a lot to get done, I like to do projects where I know that there's dry time, I can mess with a little bit, walk away, come back to it. So I thought I would share fixing this statue that I have here with you guys, just in case you wanted to do the same thing yourself. This is not going to be crazy professional, no weird tools or anything. These are just pretty basic crafty things that you should have on hand or are easy to acquire if you don't. And we're just gonna do this process today. There is, as I said, dry times in between each step, so I'll let you know how long we're letting it sit for. The statue I'm working on today is actually a cat statue with some witches' cloaks and a witch hat on. Super appropriate for Halloween. I really miss her. I was sad when she fell down, but no use crying over spilt milk, no use crying over a fallen statue. We can always put it back together. That's the nice thing about materials like this, is that they glue back together really well. And I'm going to take it a step further because I didn't find all of her pieces. She's had little pieces that have chipped off. So keeping it really simple, I just got some Sculpey that I've had sitting in my drawer for a while. So you'll get to see if old Sculpey works or not. This is just an oven baked clay if you haven't used it before. Some really basic tools that were shoved back in a drawer. And then the big thing that I'm using today to put her back together is Weldwood. It's a contact cement. So what that means is that you're going to actually put it on both sides of the piece that you want to stick together. You put it on one side. For example, I would put it on right here, and then I'm going to apply it here. Those pieces need to dry separately for 15 to 20 minutes. And then when you go to stick them together, having it applied on both pieces are what actually cements the piece back together. So that's going to be the first step that we're going to do. I'm just going to get this applied, and then we'll end up setting them to the side, and I'll be back after they dry. An important thing to note about this is that you want to use it in a well-ventilated area, and it really doesn't hurt to use a mask. That's probably smart depending on how long you're going to be exposed to it. I'm not too worried today. I should use a mask to be extra cautious, but I'm going to use it really quickly here on just a couple of pieces, and then I'm going to be able to walk away from the area and let the fumes disperse. But the fumes are harmful. Pretty much any contact cement that you're going to use is harmful, and you just want to be careful with it so that you're not breathing that in. Extremely flammable. Now you're going to see in this one, I'm just pulling it out. It has a brush in there, and that's what you're going to use to apply it wherever you need it. It's very thick and goopy. And while I want to cover everything, because I know that I'm going to come back through with the clay and try to fill it in and paint over it so that you can't really tell that she got busted in the first place. So I'm being really careful with my edges, and you don't want to get it anywhere that you don't want it, because it's a pain to try to get back up. I actually don't know how to get it off of the surface once it's on there, and it doesn't dry clear. It dries a very sticky yellow color. All right, welcome back. It's been about 20 minutes since I've left this drying. I'm going to try to puzzle it back together. You want to be sure of where you're putting a piece, because once the contact cement dries, it's actually not tacky on its own. It just sticks when it comes into contact with the other cement. So you want to be sure of your placement. For an easy one, I've got the hat here. Try to show you guys. Got the hat, I've got a little piece that goes on the hat. I'm just lining up my edges where I know they go. And I'm just gonna press them in. See, so I've got that piece back on there covering up the white spot, but that's also where I'm gonna take the Sculpey and fill in some of these cracks that I'm just hoping, because there's actually like kind of big chunks missing from certain areas. all done. I've got all the pieces stuck on there. They're pretty solid, which is really nice. The next part that I'm going to do, I might put her up on a little pedestal here in a second. Let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm gonna do next, and I'm gonna do it on fast forward like I do anytime I'm working on something, but I'll let you guys know beforehand. This is just Sculpey. It looks like I got it in white forever ago. Sculpey is an oven baked clay, so I'm gonna do my best to fill in the gaps, maybe texturize them just a little bit, and then she's gonna have to go in the oven, and I'm hoping that works. I don't know if she'll bake well or not. As far as tools that I have at hand here, I have a set that I just got from the hobby store when it was on sale back when I thought I might do more sculpting. I just never really did. So I'm not entirely sure what all I'm gonna use. I might end up mostly using my fingers just because that's what I'm comfortable with, but let's see. Here we go. She's all ready to go into the oven at 275 for 15 minutes. That's because nothing on here is thicker than 1/4 of an inch. If it's any thicker, you have to bake it a little bit longer, but I'm thinking the low bake time is going to be really good because I don't know how well she's actually going to bake. Couple of notes on what I did with the clay here real quick is that I used the texture of the statue to my advantage because the Sculpey itself doesn't want to actually adhere to this. Clay normally only really adheres to itself. So on all of the edges, I just used plenty of clay and kind of dragged them down over the texture so that it would have a good grip, and hopefully when it bakes, it'll be just as good. If not, I'll glue it on there. And then to give it the same texture, I kept it really simple. I only used 2 tools while I was carving. One of those is this little curve end here. It's kind of a scooper. I used it just to get into those little nooks and crannies that my fingers couldn't quite reach, and it was really good for smoothing the edges, but I found that my hands did better at getting it into the texture. The only other tool that I used was this little like saw looking thing, which you might have left over. Maybe if you carved pumpkins, you could take one of those and do the same thing. I just put it directly on here and pulled it back up and did that all over. And that created a nice little grainy texture like the rest of the statue, so that when I go to paint it, I'm gonna do a base color, and then it has just a very like almost light over dry brushing of black. And I'm hoping that that's gonna give us a very similar look so that when we paint her, you're not gonna see all the little places that she was broken. I'll see you guys in a little bit. Good morning. Cup of coffee here. I hope that you have yours. This turned into a 2-day video process because yesterday I just got wrapped up. It was Halloween. I had a friend that needed me. So those things were more important. I'm sorry, but I'm getting back to it today, and I really wanted to finish up because this is a cool process and I'm really hoping that it's helpful to someone, and it's still very artsy and artistic. She came out of the oven just fine. Everything dried really well. If you have any kind of outlying specks, you can just run your hands over it. Some of them will come off if they're really stuck on there and you don't like how they look. You can actually take sandpaper to the Sculpey. The Sculpey being old doesn't seem to affect it. I'm sure there is something about longevity of it, but next time a statue breaks, go ahead, pull out that forgotten package of it that you bought for yourself, maybe for your kids. And she did pretty all right. Again, because of the low heat, the glass was just fine. I do want to throw a disclaimer out there because this is a DIY, and I told you guys, you know, yeah, let's use this contact cement first and then pop her in the oven. So here's my little disclaimer. I don't recommend that. I would instead, if you're going to use that contact cement, because it is technically, it's flammable. It actually has in big letters on red, hey, like extremely flammable, danger, don't, vapors are harmful, all the things. So this is my little disclaimer to you guys. Don't do it. What you can do instead is you can use a air dry clay, and that just means more time. So air dry clays should work just as well. They might be a little more finicky. I haven't played with them too much, but that's where you're essentially going to do what you need to do and just let it dry. But you don't have to sculpt too much. The only thing I really ended up sculpting on her was her little tip of her hat needed to come back up. But next time a statue breaks or you think something's ruined, go ahead and try your hand at putting it together, because here's the thing. It's either gonna work and you're gonna love it and be so happy that you tried it, or it doesn't and oh well, it was already broken. Unless your recourse of action was you were gonna take it to a professional, and then maybe do that if you have the money for that, but this was a do-it-yourself thing. So, very last step on her that we're gonna do is she needs to get all these little white spots painted so that she doesn't look like she was chipped and cracked all over. Another option would be to paint them a different color, to use a different color clay if you wanted to make it actually like conceptual. I've talked about the Japanese art where they fill in with gold cracks. You could always paint it gold. I could totally paint all these little pieces of her copper, which I might do, but first, because I did put that texture in there and I feel like I'm doing a good job, I'm going to attempt to get the base color and then dry brush it with a little bit of black and just see if I can't get roughly what her look was. I'm using Arteza Acrylics still for this. I mean, you could really use any acrylics. Go to Walmart. They've got paint on sale for a couple dollars, for $1. I'm pretty sure, I know I bought that before for like miniatures painting. I know that's not the proper way to paint miniatures, but I'm just telling you what I did. And that's all I can do. I just tell you guys what my process vaguely is. It's usually not the most correct way to have done something, but I just poured out the Pearl Deep Brown from Arteza, and we're gonna try applying this on here. So let's just see real quick if this is the color that I want. It's not bad, actually. I was gonna lighten it. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna do a little swatch here of this color that is not terribly far off, I feel like, from the rest of it, but it is just a snitch dark. I don't know why I thought my raw umber was not this dark, but it is. I need something to lighten this. 1 second. I have white. I don't feel like white's the right color because it's gonna like kind of tint it, but we're gonna try it real quick. You guys are just gonna see me. This is part of my process because I am started some, you know, some tutorials and stuff, but primarily I'm just self-taught for messing with stuff. Yep, that's, don't add white to it, guys. Don't do it. White was the wrong choice. I knew in my head from past mixing it was, but I had to convince myself that it was. 1 moment. Okay, attempt 2, raw sienna. In case you're wondering, because I know you can't properly see right now, the white made it pretty much go gray. So that's why instead I chose a more yellowish color to just tint it lighter. Ha ha ha! This is the trick. Maybe. Yeah, I think so. Okay. That was... Those were the droids I was looking for. So, just a teeny little bit of, what did I say I grabbed? Raw sienna. And Earl Deep Brown. Both colors that are opaque, which is good because I really want them to cover what I've got going on here. I'm going to get that first layer painted real quick and I'll be right back with you guys. Okay, before I finish this up, I just want to talk to you about what I'm doing, how I'm doing this process. So all I have is a small flat brush, and I picked this because I want to be able to kind of dry brush over areas as well as really push it into areas, and that withstands stippling, I guess you would call it, a lot better than a round brush. A round brush is just going to smush and fall flat and you're going to ruin your brush. So small flat brush. I take a little bit of the pearl brown, a little bit of the, what did I say? Raw sienna. I wanted to say burnt sienna, and that was the one that was too dark. So whatever your colors are, I'm just kind of mixing it, loading up my brush with color. And then how I decided to do this, there's still another step where we are going to dry brush some more of the top. However, all I'm doing is I'm finding a white spot. So I've left one here on the cauldron, and I'm just pushing in to make sure that I get all those little cracks. And then the other thing I'm doing, because I noticed that she had some white spots on her, probably also from where she fell and got chipped, I'm just taking it, and once I put the majority of my color in here, hopefully not getting it too blocky, but that's where the next step comes in. So taking this, because I didn't match my color perfectly, and that's okay, it's a very close complementary color. It almost looks like it should belong in here. To incorporate that, and rather than trying to, you know, be terribly finicky with getting the base color, I'm just taking it and kind of dry brushing over areas of the statue, like this. Not a lot. Again, I don't want to fill in an area too much. I don't want to create a block of color. That's how I'll know that I've painted it. But using the texture of the statue and just very gently just flicking my brush over areas with a little bit left of that color brings that color into the rest of the statue and adds little highlights. And now it looks like that color was there in the first place. Just a fun little tip. Now we're going to wash our brush out really good. And this next part, we're gonna see. I was arguing with myself whether or not that's actually black. I think it's gray. Here we go. I was arguing with myself whether or not the dry brushing would be black, and then the more that I was staring at the statue and seeing the colors in it, I think it's actually closer to a Payne's gray. So we're gonna try that first because it's a lot easier to go lighter and add some dark over top than it is to go too dark at first and then trying to lighten it back up, and that's not what I want. You don't need a lot. Again, this time we're not even trying to, you know, cover any white areas. It's already covered. I could realistically leave her like this if I wanted to, and there's just like patches of solid brown. However, that's not what I'm going for. So taking my same brush, kind of, I want to dry the bristles out a little bit. They're dry brushing. That's how small of a dot I'm using. I'm not using much paint at all. Just a teeny little bit of the Payne's gray. Let's try this somewhere I can kind of really see it. And hopefully, with the texturing, I'm just really gentle with it. Yep, you actually don't want your brush to ever go flat when you're doing it, just the tips. You're dusting it. Think of your paintbrush like a feather right now. And that's what it is. Yep, that Payne's gray is exactly what I wanted. All right, little feather brushing. I'm gonna do that same thing all over the rest of the areas. We're gonna take a look at her when she's done. All right, she is all done, and I think I'm pretty happy with how she came out. You can't tell too much where she was busted. I think she just looks whole again. Yay! Well, I hope that at some point in this video you picked up a tip or trick that's gonna work well for you as far as trying to repair something or painting. And my biggest thing is that when you're doing a project like this, while we find that art is therapy sometimes, if it's getting really frustrating and you have a very specific goal, it's okay to take a deep breath and walk away. Obviously, try something different if one technique's not working. I found a little bit way through that just brushing it wasn't working as well on some areas as it was on others, so I did have to do a little more of a tapping motion to get the type of effect that I wanted. So all I did was, just kind of changed my game plan halfway through. If that didn't work the way that I wanted it to, I'd probably take a deep breath, walk away for a minute, and come back, because it can be really frustrating working on something that you have a very specific idea of how you want it to turn out. So deep breath in those instances. Don't break it. Don't continue forward more, especially if you're painting and all you're getting is mud. I promise you, you want to let that layer dry and then just come back to it and work on it again. Hey, buddy. That being said, I hope that whatever you've got going on in your lives is going well, whether you've got a busy day ahead, maybe start some morning meditations, just anything to make you feel good and feel like you're ready to tackle the day. I'm gonna see you guys tomorrow. Bye.